This is the Dynasty Roundtable podcast. We are here today to wrap up our ranking series. We've done quarterbacks, we've done wide receivers, we've done running backs. The only position left to do is the tight end. So we're going to be sharing our tight end strategy with you, our team building strategy in regards to tight ends. Do we care about them? Hint, hint. I don't really much, unless I get the top two. And then we will be going through our top 30, yes, 30, because we're psychos, rankings and tiers. But first, Matt Babich, how are you doing this evening as we were recording this?
Well, we are another day closer to football, so that's another day that I have done better than the day before because our emotional peak comes at football season, and naturally, we're ramping up. So, our rookie drafts are coming to a close. The Dynasty Roundtable Rookie League or Rookie Draft just came to a close, and it's really starting to feel palpable. You even walk outside and you just feel that it's football season. So, unfortunately, not the most exciting topic today, but we are going to answer the question that, we've gotten letters, social media DMs, phone calls, all wondering what our tight end rankings are and what our strategy is behind tight ends. Seth, the people have been demanding it. They've been knocking down at our doors, demanding it. It's time we give it to
tight end. The tight end is like the bullpen in baseball. Like the tight ends are clearly the guys that you want to have beers with. The tight ends and the offensive linemen are the guys that you want to go out and have beers with. Okay. The quarterbacks, no, those guys are boring. Okay. Like Tom Brady had what? Pistachio ice cream every night or avocado ice cream. That's it. Avocado ice cream. And they're too busy because they have to be, right? The good quarterbacks, they're always watching film. They have to know everything. The wide receivers, they're kind of, if you go to the bar with one of them, they're liable to get into a fight or cause some kind of drama. Terrell Owens, classic example. And then, the stuff with Stephon Diggs this offseason. Running backs might be number 3 on the list of people you'd want to go have a beer with. I assume. I bet
running backs and receivers you want to go to the club with.
Okay, yeah, that's probably a good distinction to make.
The confident, cocky, attention attracting receivers, and you want the wild card running backs.
Yeah. Which running back do you think would be, or first of all, let me just pose it as this question. Which player would you want to go out to the bar with out of all the players in the National Football League? Who would it be? Kelsey's probably not that guy anymore. Kelsey probably would have been that answer because living in Kansas City, he had been known to frequent the Power and Light District downtown, which is just a collection of bars, like outdoors kind of. And so he would have been a good one. I guess any sort of offensive lineman, maybe Joe Tooney. I don't know. Maybe not Joe Tooney. He seems pretty serious, but I don't know. Do you have an answer off the top of your head?
If I'm trying to just have a good time, I think getting a drink with Keon Coleman would be an incredible time. we would just talk about
Jameis.
Yes. No. Yeah. There we go. I should have. How dare I not think of the person in the NFL I would definitely most get along with the best, and that's Jameis Winston. That would be a great time. Now, I will say, sometimes when I go out, there's a lot happening, and I'm not in the mood for like constant back and forth conversation that requires, a lot of energy from me. And I do feel like it would take a lot of work to just like be out at a bar with Keon Coleman or Jameis Winston, because you got to handle your part of the conversation. Like you got to have that back and forth all the time. So like maybe a CeeDee Lamb, or like you said, Joe Tooney is like a little serious, but somebody who's like a little bit more reserved, but still likes to have a good time. That's the type of person you want to go out with too, because, they're a little bit more low key. And then, if you're going for, we want to go to the club, we want to get the bottle service, we want, all the ladies around us, then what? You'd got to go with Joey B?
Yeah. You mean Joey Bosa?
Joey Burrow.
Joe Burrow. I don't know. I don't know about that.
I don't know. Who's the biggest club? It used to be guys like, Plaxico Burress. You know what? Thinking about it, I think going to a club with Plaxico Burress would be very entertaining.
Oh my God. Wow.
If history repeats itself, you'd get to see a gunshot wound.
Yeah. I have an this article must be out of date. I pulled up an article that says the top 15 NFL personalities that we'd love to. Yeah, it's from 2018. And sadly enough, Jim Irsay is at the top of the list. R.I.P.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Well, let us know in the comments who you would want to go out and get a drink with or go to the club with in the NFL. Who's your first pick?
Yeah, let us know. But Matt, we have to get into the tight ends as much as we might not want to. Okay.
Whoa, pause.
I'll have to edit that out later.
We need to discuss the position that is known as the tight end.
The armpit of fantasy football, the tight end.
It really is. You have an entire format that is dedicated to helping tight ends be more valuable.
Well, our league, the Dynasty Roundtable League, is 2 points per tight end. 2 points per tight. It's a PPR league, but you get an extra point every tight end does for catching the ball.
And then
just to try to make it and you implemented the bully tight end strategy, and you're not so in love with your team. So even that format, which you would think would, and it probably does, but I mean, there's only so many tight ends, that you would want to start on a week in your flex, even with that type of scoring, you know what I mean? And it's kind of tough. It's tricky to figure out because, I mean, who saw Jonnu Smith coming last year? You know what I mean? Nobody. So with that being said, what is your overall strategy with the tight end? Are you trying to get the elite guys, or are you willing to wait a little bit?
And to clarify on that, we actually were in on Jonnu Smith last season, but not we weren't calling him to have that kind of season. We knew he'd be involved, but no one was really saying that Jonnu Smith was going to be a top 10 tight end.
He was my overall strategy.
What's that?
He was one of those tight ends that we are going to talk about here in a minute that was worth taking a shot on based on his value, and that if you did that, it paid off. But sorry to interrupt.
Well, I don't like my team in the Dynasty Roundtable League. But I got the 7th pick in the draft, or the 8th pick in the draft out of 12, because Trey McBride and Brock Bowers wouldn't let me lose. It was so frustrating because my team was not very good and they just would not let me lose. But tight end premium doesn't really even things out. It does introduce a new wrinkle, but really all it does is inflate that top end of the funnel, because like you said, even a Hunter Henry is not a desirable, these dart throw streamer tight ends, even in 2-point tight end premium, are not great looks. Now, the upside is certainly palpable. You got guys like Hunter Henry that can drop 36 points in a league like that with enough catches, but there are also ceiling bets at other positions, especially when you're playing in a league that is a lower amount of starting positions and a higher amount of flex spots, like our league. So you can play the primary, section of our rosters are flex, and that widens the pool so much that a Hunter Henry at your flex 3 still isn't really that desirable. And even more so, paying up to have guys like Isaiah Likely and in that middle tier is also foolish, because it's the same upside as the Hunter Henrys, who are much cheaper. And we work ourselves back to this point where it's exactly the same as standard tight end scoring, except Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Sam Laporte, Hawkinson, Kittle, the elites have just basically become one of the most valuable skill positions in the game, akin to the Jamar Chases and the Justin Jeffersons. Like, that's how much they are valued. So the strategy is exactly the same, no matter if it's tight end premium or non-tight end premium as a whole, which is we're looking at the top end of the funnel and we're going to see if we can target those guys, not necessarily throwing away our entire draft strategy or abandoning value to try and trade up just because we want to get George Kittle, who's the last person in our elite tier of rankings, for example. But understanding that if the value is right and you say, hey, TJ Hawkinson is a guy who should be valued higher, I'm gonna take a top 5 tight end here. Perfect. If you're not doing something like that, you're gonna make some dart throws. It's kind of like quarterback, but the middle of the funnel, i.e., the Dax and the Kylers of the land, are nothing burgers. We're going to go through the rankings here, but we're going to talk about Kyle Pitts, Isaiah Likely, Dallas Goedert. Like, this is the middle of the funnel of tight ends, and experienced fantasy players know by now that they aren't as good for you as you think.
Yeah. I'm doing some research on the fly because you said something, and this whole theory, like, tight ends and how important are they? And I would say, if you have a positional advantage, like if you drafted Brock Bowers, especially if you drafted Trey McBride, like that's how you should look to handle the tight end position. Because if there's an elite option coming out, like Brock Bowers, and I didn't think, to be fair, I didn't think he would be this good. But if you look at tight end scoring last year, and really, you could probably go back a ways, like 5 or 10 years. The top options, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, George Kittle, 15 fantasy points per game. Brock Bowers 15.5, Trey McBride 15.6, Kittle 15.8. The next option, we talked about him, Jonnu Smith, tight end 4. Everybody saw that coming, 13.1 fantasy points per game. Then Kelsey, even though everybody was down on Kelsey, he still finishes the tight end 5 in total fantasy points. But then once you get to tight end 8 or 9 or 10, we're talking 10 fantasy points or less. We're talking Sam Laporta averaged 10.9 fantasy points per game. Pat Freiermuth, 9.9. Tucker Kraft, 9.6. Like, in comparison to, a wide receiver, like we're talking like wide receiver 40-ish in scoring. Like that's what the tight end 8, 9, and 10 is going to give you. And then when you compare tight end 8, 9, and 10 to like tight end 15, 16, 17, it's 10 fantasy points versus 8 fantasy points per game. It's not a huge difference. So there's not much. There's a big difference between tight end 1, 2, and 3 and tight end 10, but there's not a huge difference between tight end 10 and tight end 15, 16, or even 20. Like Dalton Schultz still averaged 7 fantasy points per game. So it's a tricky ground to cover, but we're going to try to do it. And do you have any other thoughts to this tight end conversation before we get started here with our rankings?
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly use Goddard as an example for my my argument about ceiling and why that is what matters more so with tight ends, because you mentioned like Travis Kelce. He had a horrible year, but he didn't because he had 4 20-point weeks and the ceiling was there and he achieved those weeks. And yeah, sure. Did you probably lose 4 to 7 points of positional advantage if you started Kelce every single week versus the tight end opponent of yours? Sure. But on those weeks where you get 22, 25 fantasy points, that helps you extraordinarily. And so when you look at Player Profiler and you take a look at Dallas Goedert, who was 10th among tight ends in fantasy points per game, he was 18th among tight ends in best ball points added. And that's total accumulated. So there is a little bit of a discrepancy there because he didn't play a full season. But even taking into account his 2.2 fantasy or best ball points added per game, that's not very far off from a wide range of tight ends, like you said, that are just on the cusp of being the elites. So ceiling is what really matters, especially when everyone in this position is mid for the most part.
Yeah, and taking multiple shots on guys that you think have the volume and the potential to maybe not equal a Brock Bowers, but, the difference between taking a Brock Bowers super high and this taking multiple shots on guys, in round 20, 22, 25, super late in your startup or super late in redraft even, there's the opportunity or the draft capital cost versus the production. You can really make up some ground if you just focus on other positions, in my opinion. That's not to say that I wouldn't be interested in Brock Bowers or Trey McBride at the right price. Brock Bowers and Trey McBride are in tier 1. And do you have any problem with tier 1, Mr. Babbage?
No. These are the elite of the elite. And when you look at the numbers, it's very apparent. When you look at their usages within their offenses, it's very apparent. They're young. They're the new wave in the tight end land.
Yeah, and there could be some major tight end or touchdown, because Trey McBride only had 2 touchdowns last year. So if he turns in 5, 6, 7 touchdowns in that offense, I get it. Nothing changed. Kyler Murray's still there. The offensive coordinator's still the same, but Trey McBride's good, so he's probably going to catch more touchdown passes this year. Let's just roll right on past this tier and go to tier 2, which includes Sam Laporta and TJ Hawkinson. And we were talking about TJ Hawkinson before the show about how he's one of my buys, and we've covered this, and he's currently tight end 7 according to Keep Trade Cut, behind George Kittle and the rookies that were drafted this year. And then they do have Sam Laporta as their tight end 3. And I don't know about you, but in a world where, the tight end doesn't age quite like the other positions, right? The age apex happens a little bit later for tight ends. And TJ Hawkinson's going to turn 28. I think he's got a lot of good football left in him. I think that Minnesota offense, granted, there's a lot of competition for targets. There's a rookie quarterback, so I suppose there is some risk with TJ Hawkinson, but he's in a damn good situation and he's a really good player. So, and he's proved to us before that he can be a top option. So I don't quite understand why, the rookies are ranked ahead of him, because, as much as we like Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren, which we do, they haven't proven it to us yet. And there isn't enough of an age difference for me. There is a big age difference, but, I still think I've got a good 3, 4, potentially 5 years of really good to elite TJ Hawkinson production, even coming off the injury. But what say you?
Yeah, I think that's a good challenge in my rankings, because I do have Warren one spot ahead of Hawkinson here. The age difference for me is big enough to at least potentially have them in the same tier. I get that there's going to be a fear of having an unproven talent in tier 2, but first round pick within the first 14 picks, historic producer out of Penn State, has all the tools, and they're installing and they're clearly trying to get this offense in Indianapolis to work. It's almost a certainty that the Colts are going to be in play for a new quarterback if they don't get anything out of Anthony Richardson this year. And historically, just looking at draft capital and the opportunity that comes with that, I think Warren is in a really good spot to be here in tier 2. I think the target competition even longer term with Colston Loveland is still a little bit up in the air, to where he's on the other side of TJ Hawkinson for me. But I think there's probably a sturdier argument, like you said, and maybe overrating that age difference between Warren and Hawkinson, because like you said, I've said it a bunch on this podcast. The average Dynasty league lasts like 3 years or less than 3 years, something like that. And if these are the windows we're playing in, and again, something we say all the time on this show is that we're playing in these 2 to 3 year windows generally. And if that's the case, then you should be very confident that you have plenty of length in your window or plenty of room in your window for TJ Hawkinson, which I do believe now I will flip-flop and put Hawkinson at 4 and Warren at 5. Only I moved quickly. I know people are going to listen to this and be like, wow, he gave up his position really quickly. I've been thinking about that a lot. It was a very tough ranking to come to the conclusion of, but I think Seth this time is on the right side of history.
Very good. And TJ Hawkinson, before, he got hurt really late in the 2023 season, and it was a major injury. So we knew he was going to miss time. We just didn't know how much time. Torn ACL, MCL in week 16 of 2023. So he's completely recovered now, or at least he should be. And in that 2023 season, we forget he was tight end 2 in fantasy points per game. He had 127 targets in 15 games played. He was on pace to just shatter his previous record, which was the year before, of 129 targets. So something to think about. I think TJ Hawkinson can get back to that point, even with some serious target competition in the offense. Let's move to tier number 3. And this is potentially, I don't think it's too spicy here to have the rookies ahead of the veterans, but Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, George Kittle, Mark Andrews are in our tier 3. And just to give some transparency, I do have Loveland ranked ahead of Warren. So maybe we can talk about that. But we are pretty in lock. We have Kittle at 7, both of us, and then we're pretty much in lockstep 8 and 9. I have Mark Andrews at 8. You have him at 9. So why Tyler Warren over Colston Loveland? You kind of talked about it a little bit, but why make that ranking?
To be honest, who fucking knows? Like that's my my answer to
Fair.
this.
All right.
If you, because look, and I'll give my reasoning here, what little there is, but if you want to tell me, if anyone wants to come to me and tell me, it's like, hey, I know for a fact that one of these two is going to be the clear option, I'd be like, all right, great. What are tonight's lottery numbers? Like when, who wins the Super Bowl next year? Because you have found somebody who could see into the future. And I think they deserve to be ranked very close to each other. But there are multiple variables across each aisle here that do not have anything to do with talent that are going to be impossibly difficult to predict. On the one side, Tyler Warren, likely going to get a healthy amount of volume in that Colts offense. But we don't know how much that Colts offense is going to be scoring. They were scoring enough last year to produce fantasy success. Brock Bowers, obviously, the Raiders were not a good team, but Brock Bowers was getting enough volume to make that work. So how good is the Colts offense going to be? Who's going to be their quarterback? I'm so bad at getting my fingers like in the camera view and when I do my hand gestures. But on the other side, Colston Loveland, what does his opportunity look like year one with DJ Moore, with Rome Odunze, with, I know he's hurt right now and he is missing valuable time, but with Luther Burden, who should be on the field at some point this year. And maybe if Luther Burden's out for an extended amount of time, maybe they re-sign Keenan. Who knows? Probably not. But still, where does he fall in that pecking order year one? Where does he fall in that pecking order year 2? Is DJ Moore around? Does this offense actually take the leap that we want them to? And that's a lot of projection on each side that we aren't going to be able to do. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. We don't know if Daniel Jones is going to deliver him a 85% catchable target rating and just pepper him with easy targets over the middle of the field. Like, we don't know if Colston Loveland is going to be the Sam Laporta of the Bears with Ben Johnson. It's all very difficult to predict. And you can give me an argument for Loveland. I could give you an argument for Warren, and you just got to shrug and say, get your guy, like we say on here every now and then. They're both first-round picks, and both are going to be very big parts of their offenses for the next 5 years plus.
What tips the scale for me, and if you just look historically at what Ben Johnson has done, and I've been digging into this for my, I haven't told you this, but if I'm doing a redraft guide, which I'm hoping to have done at the first July 1st. I'll just go ahead and say it, so that makes me commit to that date, which will be free for everybody to look at. But it's interesting because last year Sam Laporta was dealing with injuries and he only has a 17% target share. But the year before, just so happened to be a rookie tight end entering a situation with, some serious target competition. And he had 120 targets, had a 21% target share, and finished as the tight end 3 in fantasy points per game. I think it's much more likely that Colston Loveland has a good season versus a Luther Burden, for example. And I don't know what the hell's going on with DJ Moore in practice. And I hate it when other people show these slow-mo clips of practice. So I don't really pay too much attention to this, but it's happening, with DJ Moore. And I don't know. Colston Loveland being Ben Johnson's first ever draft pick. I mean, that's a pretty bold statement to make. And I just think the offensive ecosystem is better. The play caller's better. The quarterback's better. So that tips the scales for me. And I think that it's possible that, he could have a good season in year one, even with that heavy target competition. So
I'm good with everything you said there besides the first draft pick point. I get that a first round pick is different than a third round pick, but we said that same shit with Marvin Mims. It was Sean Payton's first draft pick in Denver.
Well, we're saying it again with RJ Harvey.
He's the first running back that Sean Payton drafted in Denver. We actually we are. So good on you to call out that hypocrisy on our part. But yeah, I think you're right there. It's probably wise to be leaning towards the better offense. But I'm gonna look to a couple of years ahead. I think Indianapolis can figure this out. And just like Brock Bowers, I don't think Warren has to be good in year one. I don't think the Colts have to be good in year one for Warren to have a good season either.
Okay. Let's move to tier 4. And this is a bigger tier. And this is kind of where it starts to get messy a little bit. We have David Njoku, Jonnu Smith, Tucker Kraft, Dalton Kincaid, and Evan Ingram. And I am shocked that I am Mr. Evan Ingram, and you have Evan Ingram at 16. I have him at 11. So we're going to get to a major discrepancy here in a minute. I don't know if you see it or not, but it's coming, folks. So stay tuned.
Dude, you're out of your fucking mind. There's no way.
We don't.
And we skip this tier, please. We can't just. Can we go back to tier 4?
Yeah,
this has to be addressed right now.
All right, so let's just say the names. All right, so we have Terrence Ferguson, Kyle Pitts, Elijah Arroyo, Mason Taylor, and Isaiah Likely. And I am holding on to every bit of cliff edge that I can hold on to with Kyle Pitts, because I don't know if I buy Drake London as a 30+% target share guy. God damn it. Who else is catching passes in that offense? Darnell Mooney? Ray McLeod? Like, you can't tell me that they can't figure something out with Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is still, how old is he? 24 years old still? We know it takes tight ends a while to break out sometimes. He could be bad. He is
bad.
He's been bad. He's been very bad. But
if he were an actor/comedian, he would be Sinbad.
But look at the profile. The profile's like something. He could be, I'm struggling to, like, an Irv Smith I was so in on Irv Smith too. So this could be another situation where, the athletic profile doesn't matter. The guy's he's not a good football player, but he's 24 years old. New quarterback, maybe that changes things for him. We haven't seen a ton from Michael Penix. I'm just saying that I'm willing to take the upside shot in this muddled tight end 8, 9, 10. Once we get past Kittle and Mark Andrews, keep trade cut. Where does keep trade
at
cut
9 though? That is absurd.
Keep trade cut's more on my side than on your side.
Don't
keep
care.
Trade cut has him at okay. The public's on my side, so
where
maybe
does he have him at? I do care where they have him at. I just don't care that they're closer to you.
They have him at tight end 11.
That's asinine. Here's the thing.
You want to tell the people where you have Kyle Pitts, because this is even more ridiculous than me. I would love tight end 9.
I have Kyle Pitts at tight end 21 because I would rather do almost anything else than roster Kyle Pitts at this point in time. And just so we're all clear, here's everyone that's before him. Jake Ferguson finished as a tight end, 7 2 years ago when Dak played a whole season? Why is he so low right now? Dallas Goedert, tight end 10 in fantasy points per game last year. Brenton Strange actually showed a little something. He might have had just as many spike weeks as Kyle Pitts did last season. And he's going to be the third pass catcher on a team where the defenses are going to be struggling like hell to cover Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. So the target share may not be there, but there could be a lot of efficiency for Brenton Strange. Mason Taylor, second round pick. You have him at 16, so we're aligned there. Elijah Arroyo, I admit I'm a little high there. Terrence Ferguson, believe I should be high on him. Evan Ingram, these are not in order now. I'm just kind of saying names that are above Kyle Pitts. None of this to me feels not reasonable. Why would I jump into this, run across the same busy street where I've gotten hit by a car 4 years in a row, but no, this time I'm going to make it through to the other side. It's not going to kill me this time, except it's going to, because they haven't had a positive thing to say about this guy all off season. They're to the point where they're talking about effort, and he's being talked about as a trade candidate. It's
well,
bad
that might
for Kyle
actually be
Pitts.
good.
I can't imagine him being a top 10 guy in my rankings.
That actually might not be the worst thing in the world if he got traded. I don't know if it's one of these deals where he just thought he was so talented that he didn't need to put in the effort. I don't know, but I just know that the Falcons haven't replaced him yet. They could have addressed. This was a decent tight end class. They chose not to address the position. They really didn't add much of anything in terms of wide receiver. So I don't know. I think that there's some opportunity here for him, and Michael Penix could be better. He should be actually a lot better than Kirk Cousins. So it's a complete projection. I could be falling for the trap again. I completely get it, but I'm still in on the Kyle Pitts. Let's talk about. I know we're both lower on consensus on Tucker Kraft. You have him at 10. I have him at 14. Not a huge difference, to be honest. But Tucker Kraft, if you pull up his box score, he is living off of a few weeks. And I know some people out there they really like Tucker Kraft, but he was 14th in fantasy points per game. And outside of weeks 5 and 4 and 5, he really was more of a back end tight end 1, outside of the tight end, top 12 tight ends in a lot of those weeks. And this he's on the field a ton, which is great. But the problem is, and the Packers just drafted Matthew Golden, they like to spread the ball around and they like to run the ball. It's not as good of an offensive ecosystem as you might think. So I do not agree with keep trade cut. I had it pulled up here. and keep trade cut keeps freezing for me for whatever reason. It's probably my computer just cranking. But yeah, Tucker Kraft is tight end 8, right behind TJ Hawkinson. I think that's preposterous.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a runaway train value because of a couple of weeks. I say that as the person that has him at 10. I felt like it was too high, and I still feel that way a little bit. That being said, he is living off of a few weeks, but that ceiling, the fact that he could be a 4-catch, 88 reception, 2-touchdown guy is very palpable. He's not a 7+ target guy. That happened 1, 2, 3 times last season, and that's really without a major target earner in Green Bay. So I'm telling you, I'm telling the audience, you in real time, I have Tucker Kraft too high. I have Evan Ingram too low. I got a little bit ageist. Somehow I went through my rankings and I did them at work, and that's probably why it happened like this.
Hopefully your boss does not watch the show, because you've admitted on this show that you check your tweets while at work.
Oh, brother, no one I work with, no one I know watches this show besides my dad.
Hey, we've got some viewers out there.
Well, I said no one I directly work with. But so what? What's
you never know. You never know.
I take what I do on my lunch break, Seth, is my business.
It sounds like you should be working during your lunch break, according to what's anyway. It doesn't matter.
No. We don't need to. We don't need to get into that. Now, hold on. Now I got to tell the viewers that I'm not about to be fired at my job for lack of productivity, because that's what this is starting to sound like.
When you've got your dynasty rankings pulled up,
I'm a very high
your dynasty rankings.
I'm a very high
instead
performer.
of working.
Somehow I didn't get ageist with Jonnu Smith, but I did with Evan Ingram. So I think there's some things to iron out for me there. I like the way the tiers are set up, even with Kyle Pitts out there. But what are your thoughts on the rookies? In tier 5, we have Ferguson, Arroyo, and Taylor there. What are your thoughts?
I love taking upside shots on these rookies. I'm not in lockstep with you on Arroyo. You have him at 14. I have him at 19. But we are on the same page with Mason Taylor. We're on the same page with Terrence Ferguson. So yeah, this is the point if you get to this point, why not take an upside shot on one of these guys, because they're drafted fairly high in the NFL draft. And especially Terrence Ferguson, which I got him in the Dynasty Roundtable League with the compensatory pick at the end of the second round, the 213, which, by the way, for everybody who doesn't know, and you should definitely have a prize for the toilet bowl winner to keep everybody engaged, which is what we do at the Dynasty Roundtable. And that prize is the 213 in the rookie draft. So it's not that great of a prize, but it's still something to play for. So yeah, I love Terrence Ferguson. I think he could be their starting tight end sooner rather than later. It's more of a long-term play, I'll admit. But yeah, I really like a lot of those options. Should we move to tier 6?
Let's do it.
Tier 6 is now on the board. Dallas Goedert, Travis Kelce, Jake Ferguson, and Pat Freiermuth. So there might not be as much upside with this tier, but that you could rely on it for some steady, consistent production. And that's kind of what went into my thought process as I was ranking some of these guys. So there's way more upside with, a Mason Taylor or Terrence Ferguson, in my opinion. Those guys could vault into the top 6, 7, 8 tight end conversation. It's possible. Travis Kelce is never really getting back there. He's too old, and he might retire and marry Taylor Swift anytime. Pat Freiermuth, the quarterback situation is terrible, and I think he is what he is at this point. Dallas Goedert, he's on a team that passes the ball the least amount in the league, and they have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and Saquon Barkley. And Jake Ferguson, you make a case for Jake Ferguson being higher. I have Jake Ferguson. Let me see. I'm not.
Ferguson.
Hold on. Jake Ferguson. We both have him at 20. We both have him at 20.
He does seem like a guy that's probably going to be a draft casualty at some point in his career. And I don't know where his contract's at either. He is tied up through the end of this season. So not a lot of long-term stability there. But value is very cheap for a guy who was putting up 10 fantasy points per game in 2023 and really only had 5 receiving touchdowns. So like not an absurd season from him, but he had 100 targets and 71 receptions. So that's belongs in that group for sure.
Yeah, and Dak was hurt last year, and that's going to be an interesting offense because their defense probably is not going to be very good, but they have CD and George Pickens now, and they should be able to move the ball. Dak's back healthy, so that could be a sneaky offense to invest in. Even though you would think, the Cowboys are, the Cowboys, and they have that glitz and glam. I don't know. I think that's pretty worn off over the years. So, any final thoughts on this tier before we move on to the final tier, which is, kind of the bottom of the barrel for us anyway.
Let's get to that bottom of that barrel.
So this is a huge tier. So we have Brenton Strange, which we might also have to fight. Not as big of a fight as we had about Kyle Pitts on Brenton Strange. Cade Otton, Jatavian Sanders, Hunter Henry, Chigakonkwo, Cole Kmet, Dalton Schultz, and Mike Gesicki in our tier 7. And we might also mention I have Benson Sinnott ranked 29th. Matt does not have him ranked. I have Zach Ertz at 30. Matt
just had to throw me under the bus there with Sinnott. All right.
I'm about to. You have Theo Johnson at 29. I don't have Theo Johnson ranked. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. If you want to say that's throwing somebody under the bus, I don't know. I mean, Ben Sinnott.
It's just telling people the truth about our rankings.
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah. Any thoughts on this tier? I mean, Brenton Strange, you have him, just for full transparency, you have him at 18. I have him at 27. I've never been a big believer in the player. This was one of those draft picks that was when it was made. I was like, holy shit. What did they just let Tony Khan run the draft, or like what's the deal there? This was kind of a player that was really on nobody's radar from what I remember. I mean, we knew of him, but we didn't think he'd be drafted, in round 2. So I've just never been a real big fan of the player, and I get it. The situation's better from a target share perspective, but sell me on Brenton Strange and tell me why I have him too low.
Yeah. So it's a lot about opportunity, right? So he's a little bit older, but he's a 3rd-year player. And again, that's the breakout year for tight ends, typically speaking, that 3rd year. And when we look at Brenton Strange, we look at what happened last year when he was placed in when Evan Ingram left for an injury and Brenton Strange became a starter. He had a week where he finishes the tight end 9, 4 catches, 4 receptions, 4 targets, 4 receptions. I am losing my mind here. 24 receiving yards and a touchdown, and 12.4 points, tight end 9 on the week. That's a depressing stat line, right? And that's tight end 9 on the week. Now, that type of volume in a Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter offense, 4 target games are probably going to be something that happens every now and then for Brenton Strange. But if this offense is improved, we know he's a red zone value. He's a very large man, 6'4", 253. And what was his red zone target rate last year? Not great over the course of the whole season. But then he had later on in the season, week 15, had a 12 target, 11 reception, 73-yard performance. Didn't even find the end zone. 18 fantasy points, tight end 2. That was his breakout game. Then the next week, he goes out and he hurts his shoulder. Not a good body part for a pass catcher to injure. If you've never injured your shoulder, it's difficult just to put it above your head, let alone contort to catch a pass or hold on to a ball when you get, pummeled in the shoulder. And it hindered the rest of his performance throughout the rest of the year. So we were really robbed of something great there with Brenton Strange. And I think it said a lot for that team to take away an incumbent starter and Evan Ingram, somebody who probably wouldn't have caught. I can't remember what his market value was in Denver, but I'm sure Jacksonville could have probably swung a contract. Trevor Lawrence and him clearly had a very good relationship. Just look at the usage stats for Evan Ingram over the past few years. And they decided we're going to continue with Brenton Strange. We're not going to address anybody in the draft. They say that they believe in Brenton Strange based on all of this information. I think he can work in an offense where he could really be freed up to work the middle and not be relying on him playing on the outside, which they had him doing quite a bit last year because they really didn't have anybody else besides Brian Thomas Jr. that was capable of pushing a defense and really causing some havoc. So having Hunter and a second-year Brian Thomas Jr. is going to open up a lot of avenues for Brenton Strange to play in some friendlier scenarios and get some friendlier defensive looks. So I think there is a lot to love about him, especially when his price is more along with the Cade Ottons, the Ja'Chavion Sanders, the Hunter Henrys, the Chigakonkwo's. I do have him fairly high, and it is a shot. It's a risky rank, but I think his upside is worth him being more of a mid-tier than a lower-tier tight end.
I think we have a bet to make here.
Okay.
Kyle Pitts versus Brenton Strange.
Fantasy points per game?
Fantasy points per game.
Done. Do I get odds? Do I get a plus minus, or is this straight up?
No, you have him ranked ahead of Kyle Pitts.
But just because I have the Eagles as the best team doesn't mean I should take them to win the Super Bowl at plus 100. That's not how odds work. Nah, I'm kidding. I will absolutely take a bet. Brenton Strange versus Kyle Pitts. Fantasy points.
All right. Good. It's the first bet of the year, and I completely forgot about all of our other bets. So I will make a note right now on the podcast of our bet.
At the end of the year, we'll do a video that recaps all of our bets that we made throughout the year
versus Kyle Pitts. Total fantasy points. All right, or total fantasy points per game.
One of us could be very disappointed if that's the way we did it.
All right. Okay. Any final thoughts about these rankings? Anything we glossed over that
I glossed over Ben Sinnott in my rankings, and I apologize to that. I apologize to the people. He should be on this list.
Oh, yeah, he should be on the list. Keep Trade Cut has been at tight end 24, so I'm lower than consensus.
One thing I'll never do is just sit here and lie for the sake of lying to cover my ass. Like, no, I messed up. I forgot him. It happens.
Yeah, so let's talk real briefly. Noah Gray. Is there any interest for you on Noah Gray?
Slight interest in the fact that they haven't tried to address tight end outside of Kelce, but I think that's more of the Chiefs seem like an organization who they're going to worry about Kelce's replacement after Kelce. Mm-hmm. And, gotcha. Noah Gray hasn't been super relevant now. I'll look at him like he would be a waiver wire ad for me. If you're in a deep roster, then I could consider stashing him. I think he'd be a waste of a roster spot unless Kelce is hurt.
Gotcha. I have 3 or 4 more names here, and we can just go rapid fire.
More rapid fire this time.
Yeah. Kind of some buzz about Oronde Gadsden. Jim Harbaugh made some comments. He's up 51 spots in Keep Trade Cuts rankings. You're interested
in Oronde Gadsden. Why not? I think we liked him as a prospect coming out of Syracuse. Didn't get the draft capital we wanted, but landed in a very interesting situation where Will Dissly was valuable in fantasy formats last year. So at his price, you should be interested.
Yeah, I will be putting in some waiver claims for him for sure. Juwan Johnson from New Orleans. Technically, I think he's the starter. Any interest there? Yeah, that situation's that. God, I just that if Tyler Shuck is not good, and I don't think he's going to be good, that is going to be a rough situation. And I still don't understand why people are in on Chris Olave still, but hey, maybe.
Well, weren't Shuck and Juwan Johnson teammates in college?
I have actually. Is that a
Dude,
joke?
I'm pretty
I don't
sure
know.
they were. I'm dead serious.
Oh my God. If they were, hold on. Juwan.
2019.
Oh my God. This can't be real. Juwan Johnson played. He went to, would have had to been Oregon. Oh, it's possible, I suppose.
2019 in Penn State. Yeah, they played together.
No, it wasn't Penn State. It was Oregon in 2019, right?
Yeah, Shuck was a freshman at Oregon in 2019, and Johnson was a senior at Oregon. He transferred from Penn State.
Jesus Christ! Wow.
With Justin Herbert on the team too. Oh my gosh, that's
wow.
I remember seeing that during the draft. I knew I wasn't making that up.
Wow. Yeah, Tyler Shuck played in 7 games, attempted 167 passes in 2020. 13 touchdowns, 6 picks. So yeah.
I couldn't fathom being a tight end going into my 6th season and telling my coach, like, hey, I went to college with that guy. We should draft him.
Yeah. Oh, God. I think that's gonna do it. I don't really see too many other names here that would spark interest. But let us know if we missed anybody that should be mentioned.
Someone's gonna talk about Michael Mayer.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a guy who should get traded, to a team that actually will use him the way that he should be used, because there's no doubt that the Raiders, I mean, whether you want to call it just them being lucky enough to have Brock Bowers fall to them in the first round or whatever the deal was, I mean, just completely nuked Michael Mayer's value. And yeah, I mean, unfortunately, he's nothing more than a stash right now.
Right.
And probably not rosterable in non-tight end premium, to be honest, depending on your format. Like especially not if you're in those FFPC leagues where you can only roster like 20 guys, for sure. No there. But even in deeper leagues, like 28, roster 28 or even 30, it's like, dang, like he's kind of tough to roster there even still. So, that's going to do it for us. Any final words of wisdom? Have you prepared your words of wisdom for the people today?
Can we I'll recap.
Oh, yeah. Here, I'll
Tier
pull it
1.
back up. Sorry.
Tier 1, we have Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. Tier 2, Sam Laporta and TJ Hawkinson. Tier 3, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, George Kittle, and Mark Andrews. Tier 4, David Njoku, Jonnu Smith, Tucker Kraft, Dalton Kincaid, and Evan Ingram. Tier 5, Terrence Ferguson, Kyle Pitts, Elijah Arroyo, Mason Taylor, Isaiah Likely. Tier 6, Dallas Goedert, Travis Kelce, Jake Ferguson, Pat Freiermuth. And Tier 7, Bretton Strange, Cade Otton, Jatavion Sanders, Hunter Henry, Chigo Okonkwo, Cole Kmet, Dalton Schultz, and Mike Gesicki. No, you were not listening to that on 1.25 speed. That's just me talking.
Well, if it was on you on 1.25 speed, I would hate to know what you're like if you take just a couple speeds, Oh,
I'll take speed.
Oh God. I didn't. Oh God. Do we need to get you some help?
No.
Or no?
No, I'm just.
Are
really
you on
tired.
Speed right now? Have you taken the drugs?
You want to look into these eyes and tell me I'm on speed?
Just because
you could fall asleep in this chair.
Just because you're having troubles at the office, staying attentive, you don't have to take speed for it. I mean, gosh. There's got to be some other solution.
Someone's going to see this one day, and I'm going to be in an interview and then be like, I don't think this is the guy we want for the job. Yeah. Pretty sure he does fantasy football and takes speed while he's at the office.
This podcast is costing Matt Babbage future employment opportunities. But let us, any final words of wisdom? I mean, when do you take your speed? When's the best time?
Oh,
afternoon.
I'm glad you asked. The best time to take your speed really is you want to time that come down like right when your bedtime is. All right. So think about like 12 to 14 hours before your bedtime. Like that's your ideal ingestion point. Now, the method of which you ingest the speed also plays a variable in this. I have no idea what I'm talking about for the record.
I did not expect you. I don't. Thank God,
dude. I will die for the bit,
monetized.
Man. You have to know. I will always do whatever it takes for the bit.
Well, if you didn't know, Matt Babbage has a drug problem, and we're sending him help. So don't worry. Don't need to call us. Don't need to leave it in the comments. All right. This will all be. We will not edit this out. It's going to cost Matt Babbage a job, maybe two, in the future. So there you go. That's your words of wisdom. How to consume drugs on the podcast. You can follow Matt Babbage in his drug-addled ways at Babbage_Matt10. You can follow the show on Twitter at FF Dynasty Table. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Seth_DIEWOLD. That is the show. Nobody cares about Aaron Rodgers. Anything you want to get in here before? I mean, we have 4 minutes. I mean,
we found a way to make the tight end show fun. I think that's.
I know. Yeah,
talked about Kyle Pitts. We talked about speed. We've covered really everything.
You just have to bring up drugs. Make everything better. All right, everybody. That is terrible advice.
Pretty sure
do not
Oregon
do drugs.
State motto.
Good Lord. Let's get out of here before we get sued or something. We'll see you later, everybody. Bye-bye now.